Do you want to know how to get your fueling right on an ultramarathon? Do you want to figure out how to do that without loads of single-use plastic sachets? If so, then this is definitely the vlog for you. Hello, welcome back to the channel, and welcome if you haven't been here before. My name is Mark and this is Big Adventures on Average Talent, and in this episode we're going to look at how to get your fueling right for an ultra marathon and how to do this without single-use plastic. Get rid of the gels, stick with real food. Okay, these are things that I know loads of us will care about in our day-to-day life, but when it comes to an ultra marathon, it's really hard to get that right. I've managed to be working on this in my last two races as a real concentrated effort. So if you watch the Road to Jungle Ultra, I'm so proud of myself for this run. Can't quite believe it. You'll know that I was close there and fell down at the end with a bunch of gels when the sun rose towards the end of the race. And then if you checked in the Berkeley Marathons UK, which was my last race and where I became the first person to get a fun run in the UK version of the Berkeley Marathons. Whew. Oh man, this is the last checkpoint and I should have key 1 labelled and prepped. Then you'll know that I was within a whisker of 100% single-use plastic-free ultra racing over 133 kilometers, and this is the video we're going to talk about how that happened. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit like and subscribe to the channel. It would be great to keep growing this channel. And also, of course, everybody's so different. Every race is really different, so I know I'll adapt what I'm doing for the next race because it will be a different race, and you'll need to adapt everything for yourself as well because we're all different. But I really hope that there's some takeaways here that you can apply to your own racing, and please drop me a comment or let me know and get in touch on Instagram if you want to discuss more or you got some suggestions on things I could try. There's never going to be a perfect system, okay, but I know that what I have had has worked so well recently, so here it is. Whew. That's 70k in, which makes this officially my longest ever run so far. Celebratory pancake. So when I first started out, I think, like most people, I relied on a bunch of gels, and you can see in this flat lay quite how much plastic there was. And I remember finishing my first ultramarathon race, the UTMB Thailand. Still climbing. This is so hard. This is so hard. Just a big pocket full of empty wrappers. But not only that, I finished having had stomach issues for the second half of the race, feeling really uncomfortable. So I knew that I needed to get a bunch of different things right. So since then, I've been experimenting with all sorts of different things. So I'm going to run through what I did for nutrition in the last two races, and I think the big themes that worked out really well for me. In the Road to Jungle Ultra, I relied on homemade pancakes. So these were pancake recipe that relied on only oats. I put in a few chocolate chips, I think, if I remember rightly. But they were fairly plain because we had to travel out to the island a few days earlier and they had to survive being transported in fridges for a couple of days before the race. So I didn't want to put in bananas or anything else. These were good. They were filling but edible. I could walk and eat them quite easily from the pack. And also they were quite appetizing. I don't think I finished them that race, but it was a funny race starting at 10 p.m. Getting food levels right there was definitely a challenge. With that race, I ate all my as much of my pancakes as I could stomach, and then when it became about 4 or 5 a.m., I switched on to a couple of gels just to pull me through. And I think one of them was a double caffeine gel because I think it was 5, 6 a.m. I knew I was being, well, I thought I was being chased by the guy in third place at that point, and caffeine seemed like a great idea. So I finished that race thinking I'd made it quite a large chunk of the race through on pancakes and dates, and then just fallen away at the end with the gels. So I wanted to maybe improve a little bit before the Berkeley Marathons, but I knew the Berkeley Marathons were also a 24-hour race, so a significant jump up from the 8 or 9 that the UTMB had been and the Road to Jungle Ultra had been. So I looked back to what I'd done a few years ago when I did Everesting, because that was a 18-hour effort. So what we'd done in that one, there have been many breaks there, so it was easier, but we had rice and bean wraps, and we also had potato salad. So in terms of the Berkeley, the challenge was mainly logistical and distance. And so each loop was about a marathon, and you had to carry everything with you within that loop. So I relied on taking quite a lot with me, and my transportable nutrition is definitely my pancakes. So we went back to the pancakes, made a big batch of those, took a chunk for each lap, and that worked really well. The first lap, ate and walked. The second lap, me and Francois sat in a bus stop and consciously ate. Celebratory pancake. Just put on the 6 p.m. compulsory fluoro. I'm about to head up to checkpoint 6, on the top of the monument. And on the third lap, sadly, I had run out of pancakes because I miscalculated. I think perhaps I hadn't quite anticipated getting onto a third lap. Thankfully, Francois' wife stepped in and saved me at this point. She took a trip to the shop during our second lap and brought back a packet of emergency pancakes for me, and that got me through the third lap. The bulk of the rest of my nutrition was eaten at the aid stations. So I'd made 3 pretty big rice and bean wraps, and managed to eat 1 between each lap. And that was definitely like a really good, solid chunk of fuel. I think to try and make that work for an actual race, they'd have to be smaller and better sealed, which is maybe an area to work on in the future. Now, the bit that had been a challenge was there was those little bits of energy, the gels. So I, for this race, had a big stash of dates and also some homemade chia energy balls, which again use dates and so on. So I had a big stash of those in my pockets and worked through those as well. The only additional parts of the nutrition came after lap 2, where I also had a 0 alcohol beer and some crisps. Again, not quite keeping up on my plastic there. So close, but there's always room for improvement. The final part of this mix, though, which was used in both the Road to Jungle Ultra and at the Berkeley, was liquid fuel. And I think this has been one of the other bigger changes I've done. And for me, I've tried Tailwind for the Road to Jungle Ultra, and it worked really well. So I haven't switched from that now. So I've got a big bag of Tailwind and just make up a sachet or 2 sachets, 2 bottles for each of the marathon length loops. And my general approach with each of those was to start on the solid food, the pancakes, and then towards the second half of the loop, switch to Tailwind. So there you have it. A combination of pancakes as bulk of the food, rice beans for the really long efforts of Berkeley Marathon at the intervals, and then replacing gels with dates and chia balls seemed to have a big impact, and switching to a liquid fuel as well. Then for those last 2 races, I have not had stomach issues like I did at UTMB Thailand, and it worked really well for me. So those were great. My areas to improve is just making sure I have enough. If I'd had a couple more pancakes, that would have been great. And then the packet of crisps and 0 alcohol beer were possibly more just mental comfort than anything else, but potentially having a bag of salted nuts or something like that to replace the crisps when I was just craving that additional salt, or maybe even a salt tablet would have been that. So not 100% zero single use plastic on that race, but a lot closer and over a 19 odd hour effort. I'm really pleased with that. I'm forgetting one other vital piece of nutrition, which was when we stopped at the pub for a Coke. But that was all part and fun and games of that race. There you have it. Those are my key tips. Okay, I think the pancakes are absolutely fundamental for me. Dates and chew balls are a nice alternative to gels, particularly great when you're on longer races. You don't need loads and loads of gels. They're not going to sit very well. For me, the dates, chew balls, pancakes doesn't seem to lead to any complications, but everybody's different. And the final big one is the liquid fuel. And for me, Tailwind works great, but I haven't tried any others yet. Haven't needed to. We'll go from there. So thank you so much for watching. What would be great would be to hear all of your ideas, thoughts and questions. Keep the conversation going and keep an eye out for my next challenge. What I've done is I've worked out on the zero plastic use for really long races. Okay, and I think, you know, having a pancake is a different ball game to my next challenge, because now I'm switching up and I'm going to be training towards a fast 10k half marathon and aiming for a marathon, but again without any single-use plastic fuel. And the new challenge for the marathon is going to include making it as environmentally sustainable and friendly as possible. So I'm going to do this without buying any new gear, okay? Only using second-hand gear that I already have, making sure that through my training and my racing, there is minimal or zero driving or carbon mileage involved, and of course, race nutrition on the day. So for my first official marathon, we're aiming to go well below 3 hours using zero single-use plastic and zero brand new gear. Let's see how that goes. So if you haven't already, please like this episode, drop me a comment below so we can have a more in-depth conversation about this, because I would still love to learn from all of the expertise out there. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. It'd be great to grow the Big Adventures on Average Talent community. See you in the next series.